Hello, everybody, and welcome to Worldsmithing, where we take a concept and world build it. I'm Cody.
And I'm Joe. And hey, Cody, how have you been?
I have been good. How have you been?
I have been all right. Uh, ain't nobody. Nope, not gonna keep doing that because I would potentially get us. Wait, hey, anyway. Welcome to another episode of Worldsmithing. So, um, for this, in our new setup for worldsmithing, one of us takes an idea and develops a sort of lore, history, idea, narrative around it. Things that your players might encounter or interact with while exploring their world. As the person's describing their creation, their world that they built or their item that they smithed, the other person will come up with ideas to kind of you know, uh, learn a little bit more about it, thinking like a player might think. So this week, Cody has so graciously decided to write our little prompt, and it is about a world-ending device. Kind of an open-ended idea, an open-ended concept. So take it
Yeah.
away, Cody.
All right. The Infinitum MK4 is an old fable. Colonists across the Gardanian frontier know all the various tales of the Infinitum, each story wilder than the next. It is rumored that an old bankrupt company, Phantom Tech, was working on a machine somewhere on the outside of the galactic ring. Its purpose is unknown. Some say it's a fountain of youth said to give anyone who entered its presence immortality, while others suggest that it is a weapon of unimaginable power, capable of destroying whole planets. While what it does is wildly unknown, most of the stories are pretty consistent that the Infinitum is planet sized, something akin to an Omega class colony ship or a Class B satellite. The last and most recent story tells of a caravan who fell upon a distress beacon with a date log of 15,000 years prior. Most left, but a few spacers dreamed of the ancient artifacts that could be worth millions. Three ships veered off into the void, only one returned. The spacer claims that there's a planet-sized entity that the three managed to find, but was surrounded by black holes, cosmic radiation, and gravitational fields that could break even the strongest of ships apart. His story inside the darkness is haunting. At first, there were faint and broken transmissions that eerily sounded like his father or perhaps grandfather. As he got closer, specters boarded the ship, seemingly unaware of what was going on, living out various parts of life, from the mundane to the horrifying. It became so intense he could swear that time almost stood still. He warns everyone in that quadrant of space to disregard the transmissions. Only death and destruction are out in the void, or so the story goes. And that is this world ending, or perhaps galactic ending device.
Whoa. All right. So
Yeah.
you mentioned that this is sort of an old fable,
Uh
an
huh.
old myth. So how long we talking? Like, is this date back to is this generations upon generations? Is this a relatively recent thing, and its myth has grown rapidly or aggressively throughout the universe?
I think it is kind of it's kind of the latter. I think it's more recent than people realize, this world-ending device, but the rumors about it and the things that go on near it are so wild and otherworldly that it almost feels like some kind of folklore tale you would tell your child that this happened thousands and thousands of years ago.
Okay, so it's one of those deals where it's perhaps bigger. Its reputation grew so fast that you couldn't help but think it's ancient based on
Right.
how widespread it's become. Interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned Phantom Tech.
Yeah.
What did Phantom Tech do? Like, what was their
Ooh.
primary purpose?
their primary purpose, they developed a lot of cloaking technology. They Phantom Tech in this universe, they developed like cloaking fields to like hide off of like radars or visually become invisible
Okay.
for for spacefaring life out in the frontier, because it's a little wild out there, if you catch my drift.
So what got them into the planet-sized mysterious device making game? Was this something that they were secretly doing on the side? Was this a secret project that was disavowed by those in power? Was it something, that they always knew about and were, kind of secretly doing?
Yeah, I kind of feel like this was like their it's kind of like the Umbrella Corporation in Resident Evil. Like their main gig, like the thing they show people out front is like, look, we make cloaking devices for ships if you're ever, in a not so great area of the galactic empire. But they've always been working on this thing,
Okay.
um in secret.
And you said that they were defunct now, right?
Correct. They no longer exist.
So what led to their downfall?
Um the players would Now, if I was doing this in a game, the players would not have an answer to this. In fact, it would be very mind altering, because
Mm,
what the and this is kind of like a big spoiler for the thing, is that this is a time traveling device.
interesting.
And what happened was, and why it's a quote unquote world ending device, is because it time travels, but it's connected to basically the weave of all existence. So like when it time travels, it is sucking the energy out of existence itself. And the more you use this thing, the more that galaxy just dies.
Okay, interesting.
Um, and so something happened when they first started to boot this up, and Phantom Tech, for some reason, is just this like old fabled company that no longer exists. It's a little bit of like that. It's weird time manipulation that has taken place. So yeah, it would be like a series of checks where the players would know one bit of information, like, oh yeah, like there's tons of spaceships, star cruisers, and all that that have Phantom Tech cloaking devices on them. But then when they try to remember, like, you know their existence, it's fuzzy, because they may have accidentally oops themselves out of existence.
Okay, so if this is such a commonplace technology on ships, then how do people know how to like fix them or maintain these devices?
Yeah, they're probably not the only people who've done it. Like, I'm sure there are other Phantom Tech-esque businesses. I like to imagine that in this kind of science fiction, like spacer setting, that there's tons of companies fighting for basically the same stuff,
Got
right?
it.
Like there's tons of like different people who build starships, and they're all competing against each other, being like, no, my starship's better, or my starship's better. It just so happens that this Phantom Tech, one of the many people who deal in defense mechanisms for starships and whatnot, just happen to suddenly disappear. And there's probably other people who know how the tech works to like fix and do other ships, so that like cloaking is not necessarily like gone. It's just this company that happened to be a big forerunner on that project is now gone.
Got it. So how difficult is it to get the information to find it? Are these three spacer ships the first ships to ever actively seek out this device or
Probably not. The way I would imagine is like the tales would just spread all over the place, right? Like spacers talking about this like wild treasure or whatever. The more recent story was to give a little more context and a little more clues as to what's going on.
Hmm.
And because it's like this kind of time manipulating world ending device, the closer you get to it, the more time is distorted. So like the first part where there's faint broken transmissions from like his father or grandfather, like those are actual real transmissions, but for some reason this time machine, if you will, is like maybe it's still on, or perhaps maybe it's kind of broken at the moment, but everything nearby is like messed up. And the black holes and like the gravitational fields surrounding this, basically this planet, are, it's kind of the equivalence of not necessarily a super great example, but like my mind goes here when I think about it. It's the planet that Emperor Palpatine, or the Sith
Exegol?
are on. Exegol.
Oof.
There we go.
Woof.
Yeah. So it's like, it's like it's almost impossible to get to this thing because like it's basically non-livable outside of it. And not only that, but like this machine for whatever reason is giving off some weird like time like energy that's like making it very difficult to get here. But you know, um I imagine that like people hear the transmissions all the time when they pass it.
Okay.
Like it's a planet, so like if there's a trade route or like planets that happen to be nearby, like I'm sure people hear the transmissions from it, but like um so finding out about it's fairly easy, but getting there would be very, very difficult,
Got it.
considering it is a, in fact, world-ending device.
You know what vibe this is giving me, which I know you didn't use as inspiration because I feel like it's borderline impossible that you
What?
might have even heard of this thing. It is a comic series that is very recent. Like the first issue only came out like 2 or 3 weeks ago,
Sure.
called "We Only Find Them When They're Dead,"
Huh.
which is a story about like a small spaceship crew of basically scavengers. And it is my understanding, based only on the first issue, like the second issue isn't out yet, it's going to be coming out in a couple weeks, that these guys are scavenging like dead celestial beings that they interpret as gods. um
Interesting. Okay.
and it's one of these deals where it's like everyone shows up and everyone kind of makes a claim for different things. And so it's like, the one guy's like, "Hey, the eyeball goop is selling really well right now." And the captain's like, "Well, if it's selling really well, then that means that there's a lot of competition for it, which is why we always go for like dot dot dot." And so the only reason I'm thinking of this is just this idea of this kind of treasure that everyone is seeking, but is kind of a difficult and dangerous thing. That was just the vibes I was getting out of it. So
Yeah.
are people primarily living on these ships, or are there like planets and bases and colonies and things like that?
A mix of both.
I know we're getting a little away from the device itself, but
No, I mean, I think that's important too, because I laid the groundwork for, one of I had three goals when I made this world-ending device. I wanted to do a science fiction setting instead of the typical fantasy, because like I could have done just about anything, flaming sword of death destruction or whatever. I wanted the device to not necessarily be a weapon,
mm,
so I went with a time machine. And then the other goal was like built into the lore, it would be very hard to get to. And when I was thinking about this, like all the other ideas started flowing from there, and that was one of the first things I thought of. Is like, um, my guess or my idea is that it's kind of like Firefly, where it's a mix of both. Like there are
mm.
space stations that people live on, and there are like people who consider themselves like spacers, and like I only fly and go on space stations. But there are planets out there that people live on and stuff like that. So it's kind of like something like Firefly or Star Wars or what have you. Like Star Trek even does that, where like there's big giant space stations, but there's also Earth. So, or the various other planets of Star Trek. That was a poor example for me to tackle because I know literally dick all about Star Trek, but you get the idea. There's both, and um this takes place in kind of the quote unquote outer rim where it's probably more likely that there are just space stations that like are kind of tied together um by like trade routes or whatever.
Okay. Is this sort of the only, so outside of obviously the cloaking tech that's on the different ships, like is Phantom Tech, do they have any other secret legacies out there in the galaxy, or is this basically the only thing that they have outside of their like spaceship technology that has made them something of a shiphold name, if not necessarily like everyone knows their exact history?
Sure. I didn't give that much thought, but I think in terms of like, so I think part of world building, or at least one of my philosophies, is like, if you're going to world build, like what's especially for like a tabletop role playing game or whatever, like what are some things you can do to expand upon that. And I'd like to imagine that Phantom Tech had a ton of different projects, like they were using their money to basically do all sorts of weird experiments and things like that. But like, that's kind of the nature of corporations in the future. Like they have their front business where it's like we sell legitimate goods, and then like they fuel their other projects that border on what legality is in the galactic sense, like maybe a time machine that's engine is fueled off the lifeblood of all existence may not necessarily be the most legal thing you could do. So that's why we're going to put it out in the far reaches of space,
Hmm.
and we're not going to tell anybody about it. And I imagine other companies would do that too. But maybe some others are more like I said before, like Resident Evil, where like, yeah, we're developing super soldiers that can't die,
Mhm.
and they're mindless killers, and all you got to do is like drop a pod on a planet and let them go wild and stuff like that.
Okay, so here's a question for you, Cody.
Yeah.
Is this the culmination of a campaign or the jumping off point of a campaign?
Ooh. I think you could do either or. I think there's something to be said about players starting a campaign on a time machine, and then the majority of it is them trying to get back to where they came from. But it also could be that like on the opposite side of the galaxy, rumor has it that there's this ancient, device that supposedly is worth millions. And if you can only get there, then you can use it. And then, like, that could be its own campaign where they go across the galaxy and finally get to this thing and realize that it's a planet sized time machine. And like, what do you do with something like that? Like, how, like, how exactly do you do that? Or like, what are the complications of why is this place like broken down? Like maybe the automated security got messed up and will just kill everything on site. So it's like, yeah, we have access to this planet now, but we can't even get through the front door without getting blasted by like Gatling lasers or whatever. I think you could do either or. Um, I think if you're going to use this as a plot device, uh, I would probably do it as like the players happen to get here, and the trip was so bad that their ship's all messed up, their captain's dead, and now they're just on this planet and they gotta like go in there, figure out what's going on.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And then
But you could really like that's the thing about world building. You could take it basically anyway. This is a thing designed to up the ante to a level that's like, whoa, like, what are we doing? Like, why are we doing this kind of a thing?
yeah, for sure. Um And so I think that kind of leads to sort of the biggest question whenever you're world building anything, be it a device or a city or a town or what have you. What missions or what things would you have the party do on, near, or around this device? Like,
Ooh, well, man, that's tough. So I think if they were on the planet, I think the quote unquote quest, it wouldn't be traditional like somebody on the planet's like, "Hey, help me." I think it's like, the the entrance to this device, albeit planet size, is like heavily defended, and and like the quest is to get to the controls and figure out what the hell this thing even is, because like they don't know it's a time machine yet. That's just for the audience currently, but the players wouldn't know what this thing is, and they're like, well, we got to get to the control center to, like, maybe it's the fountain of youth and we got to power it on or whatever. So I think if you're on the planet, like that would be like the traditional quest, is like getting into this place and surviving its, whatever happened to it. And maybe you could go about it a couple different ways. It could be like the automated security, and you could make it like a very trap heavy, like, murder dungeon. Or maybe another idea is, as they get closer to this building, and maybe the building's undefended, but they go through these like small little wormholes and get involved in stuff that happened in the past, or maybe they see the future of what's going on and they're like, holy shit, there's like this new threat that we keep coming into contact with. And you can do a lot of cool stuff with a planet-sized time machine. So that's what I would do, that if I was on the planet. If I was like directly off of the planet, probably like spacer stuff, like, hey, we need to deliver this package from here to here, but there's pirates nearby and we gotta, like, avoid the pirates and whatnot. But those are like my first instinct ideas for quests near or around this area.
yeah, that's pretty rad. 'Cause as I'm thinking about it, it's like, is this something you land on, or is this something that you accidentally, set off or whatever? So, color me intrigued as a player. I would probably wanna seek this thing out. Hey, do you have any final thoughts on your galaxy world ending device that you'd like to share with me and the listening audience?
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about it in terms of like quests. So it would take a little bit of work and a little bit of finagling, but this is definitely one of those things that you could do where you use the device and you move into the future, right?
Mhm.
And you could do that cool thing where, like, there's this enemy that keeps fighting you when you time hop into the future, and they're kind of like ambiguous and mysterious, like you can't, like the oh no, the lion armada, this like new force of people keep like sending goons to kill us. And then and like the cool twist at the end of that would be that those people are the future versions of you that got stuck in the future, and they become all twisted and mentally like unhinged from the time travel. So they're just these like space pirates who know like the flow of time or whatever. And that could be like a really cool twist, is like seeing your, like, oh, the enemy is you all along. Um
Gasp.
yeah, right? Sounds pretty dope.
Yeah, I would
But
wanna play it.
the last thing is, um when I built this, I had three goals in mind, but there's always this like kind of fourth goal that's kind of unsaid. And I don't know if we've ever talked about it on the other episodes, but I think it's important. And that is, why? Why do this at all? Um, like, for me, and like I know we do this as a show, but like if I was to develop something like this, I want to know why it's in the world for the players, like on a meta level. Like, I want to know why this is even a thing for my players to interact with. And so like for me, it's like well, that time travel. I want to do time travel adventures. I want some like Doctor Who shit, but like with the caveat that like, oh, every time we do this, like we're destroying part of the galaxy little by little, and we don't know from where or when we're destroying it. So like there are neat stories to tell with a world-ending device that isn't just a Death Star or a super armada of spaceships or a super gun or a black hole maker or whatever. A world-ending device that isn't necessarily so cut and dry makes for a very interesting campaign. Or like it came like I just kept thinking of different like once I finally settled on it's a time traveling device, I thought of so many cool ways to do it. And I think that's like the fourth hidden question for world building for a tabletop role playing game is like why what is it about this that you would use for your game?
Yeah.
And that is my final thoughts on the Infinitum Mark IV.
Yeah, I thought that was I liked that quite a lot. I thought that was a fun thing to think about, and those questions are one of those deals where who knows, your players might find it that intriguing as well. Uh,
Yeah, for sure.
but anyway, hey Cody, if
Yeah.
people liked this episode and they wanted to learn more, where's a place that they can learn more?
They can go to our website at www.fandomroulette.com, where all of our shows go live as they hit the internet. And if you go through all of our stuff, going past our bios, all the other stuff, you can have your world building questions talked about, answered on an episode, if you just fill out the form at the bottom of the website.
And hey Cody, if people want to listen to episodes of the show but they don't use the same podcasting apps as you do, where's some other place that people can listen to the show?
We're all over the place: YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, you name it, we're on it. All you got to do is search Fandom Roulette.
And hey, if people want to reach out and talk to us or send us memes or other things like that, where are some places where people can send us funny memes and things like that?
Yeah, well, you can hit us up on Twitter at fandomr_podcast. That is our Twitter handle. But if you are more of a Facebook and Instagram user, we are on there. You just got to search Fandom Roulette.
Please remember to like, rate, review, and subscribe. Ring the bell.
Yeah.
Tell a friend. Move us up those ranks in any way you can because
Yeah, all those things help the channel.
exactly it helps us make some more of this fun stuff. Because hey, we know that you can spend your free time doing a lot of different things, and we are very grateful that you choose to spend it with us.
Yeah.
So that being said, we want to thank you from the bottoms of our hearts. Um,
Yeah.
and signing off for Phantom Roulette, this is Joe.
And I'm Cody.
And as always, stay nerdy.
Stay super nerdy.